The flashing red and blue lights of federal and local law enforcement vehicles cast long, distorted shadows across. At Ellis Case reports, we do not deal in internet rumors or baseless speculation. While the tactical team secured the Range Rover and the driver sat in an interrogation room, the scientific wing of the investigation engaged in a painstaking and highly complex process known as investigative genetic genealogy. When the foreign DNA profile from the Catalina Foothills home was initially run through standard criminal databases, it likely did not generate an immediate hit. The suspect was a ghost in the traditional system. Therefore, the forensic genealogist had to construct a biological net. They took the unknown DNA and began mapping it against public genetic databases, tracing familial lineages backward through generations. They looked for distant cousins, shared ancestors, and complex family trees, slowly narrowing the pool of potential suspects based on geographical location and demographic probabilities. This process is incredibly powerful, but it is emphatically not instantaneous. It requires days or even weeks of meticulous data analysis and cross-referencing. The authorities knew this. They knew that a definitive genetic match might still be days away on the night of February 13th. But rather we read the actual case files, verify the forensics, and build, yet they executed a high-risk public interception of the Range Rover anyway. This tactical decision reveals a crucial layer of the investigative strategy. They could not afford to wait for the final laboratory report because another stream of forensic data was simultaneously running its course: digital forensics. From the moment Nancy vanished, investigators began pulling massive amounts of data from the surrounding environment. They requested security camera footage from residential systems along the winding roads of the Catalina Foothills. They seized hard drives from commercial establishments along the main traffic corridors. They accessed automated license plate readers positioned at key intersections across Tucson. They were building a massive digital grid designed to track the movements of every vehicle in the vicinity between the night of January 31st and the evening of February 13th. Within this vast ocean of video files and digital timestamps, they were specifically hunting for the silver Range Rover. Timelines based strictly on physical evidence. So if you want the cold hard facts of this investigation, hit subscribe and let us analyze the evidence together. They were meticulously working to place that specific vehicle near the Guthrie residence during the critical window of the disappearance. The decision to strike at the Culver S parking lot suggests that the digital evidence had reached a critical mass. The surveillance footage likely established a pattern of movement that the investigators deemed too dangerous to ignore. They had enough circumstantial tracking data to justify the traffic stop and the detention of the driver, even without the absolute certainty of the final DNA match. They were operating on a precise calculation of risk. Allowing the vehicle to remain in circulation while waiting for the genetic genealogy results posed a severe threat to potential evidence. If the Range Rover was indeed the phantom vehicle used on January 31st, its interior could hold the physical answers they desperately needed. Every hour it remained on the road was an hour the suspected individual could use to deep clean the upholstery, destroy fibers, or dispose of crucial items. The FBI and local police chose to lock down the physical asset before the scientific confirmation was complete. They chose to seize the SUV, secure the driver, and cast the blue tarps over the trunk. The level of secrecy at the Culver S parking lot indicated that the items in the trunk were not just incidental belongings, protecting whatever secrets lay hidden inside from both the suspect and the public eye. The investigation was now a race between the extraction of digital footage, the mapping of genetic trees, and the physical dismantling of a seized automobile. While the scientific analysis labored in the background, a parallel and incredibly destructive narrative began accelerating online. Social media platforms and amateur sleuth forums ignited with a wildly inaccurate detail that threatened to derail public understanding of the investigation. A pervasive rumor took hold, claiming that the suspect machine was discovered completely deserted in the middle of nowhere. This dangerous fiction suggested that the perpetrator had dumped the transportation and vanished into the ether, leaving behind a cold metallic shell. This is a critical juncture where we must separate verified reality from digital hysteria. According to established reports from Fox News and broadcast networks like CNN, News 18, the actual sequence of events was entirely different and far more volatile. The targeted sport utility vehicle was never left unattended. It was actively navigating through the city streets when federal agents and local police units initiated a highly coordinated and dynamic interception. They were potential physical links in a chain of evidence connecting a sudden disappearance to a prime suspect. This was a live traffic stop executed with overwhelming tactical force. The individual behind the wheel did not flee on foot into the desert brush. They were physically extracted from the driver's seat right there on the commercial pavement and immediately taken into custody for intensive questioning. Calling this an abandoned situation is not merely a semantic error. It is a fundamental misrepresentation of the suspect behavioral profile and the tactical reality of the federal operation. The driver was actively utilizing the primary piece of physical evidence when the authorities closed the net. This distinction is paramount because it places a living, breathing person of interest directly in control of the mobile crime scene at the exact moment of police contact. The suspect was completely tethered to the vehicle, preventing any defense that the car had been stolen or borrowed in the days following the disappearance. The internet speculation creates a false sense of a cold trail when in fact the trail was incredibly hot and occupied. The authorities knew that premature exposure of these items could compromise future interrogations or taint the jury pool. The rapid spread of this false deserted car theory perfectly illustrates the chaotic friction between methodical law enforcement procedures and the insatiable demand for immediate online content. While detectives were meticulously preserving the chain of custody for potential biological transfers, amateur commentators were polluting the information space with fabricated scenarios. This kind of digital interference can have severe real-world consequences, potentially generating thousands of useless tips that drown out legitimate leads and exhaust critical investigative resources. The authorities had their target secured, but the surrounding noise was deafening. Please share this video to help us dismantle these fabricated internet rumors and ensure the public is focused strictly on the confirmed investigative facts rather than sensationalized online fiction. With the driver secured in an interrogation room and the vehicle locked down under heavy guard, the central agonizing question remained completely unanswered. The suspected operator was present. The transportation was present. But the 84-year-old victim was still nowhere to be found. The presence of the driver at the wheel only amplified the terrifying mystery of her absence. Every movement, by the crime scene technicians under that tarp was calculated and precise. If this individual was indeed the architect of the intrusion in the Catalina foothills, what had they done with the passenger? The active traffic stop proved that the suspect had not fled the jurisdiction, but was instead moving freely within the community mere miles from the initial point of contact. This geographic proximity suggested a chilling level of confidence, or perhaps a desperate attempt to return to a secondary location. The investigators interrogating the detained individual were armed with the knowledge of the active vehicle interception, but they were operating completely blind regarding the ultimate fate of the missing woman. They had the puzzle box, but they were missing the most critical piece. The tension within the interrogation room must have been suffocating as detectives tried to break through the defenses of a suspect who held the only map to her location. Every passing minute decreased the statistical probability of a positive outcome. They were operating under the intense pressure of a high-stakes federal case where the narrative had reached a terrifying plateau, where the physical components of the crime were assembled, but the human element remained tragically out of reach. The focus inevitably shifted back to the only silent witness that could not lie and could not hide behind internet rumors. The intercepted vehicle itself held the physical truth locked away under layers of protective material. The metallic body of the seized transport became the absolute focal point of the entire search effort. Every inch of its interior upholstery, every crevice in its floorboards, and every microscopic particle trapped in its ventilation system possessed the potential to break the suspect's silence. The detectives knew that even the most disciplined suspect could not completely control the transfer of microscopic evidence. A stray hair, a microscopic drop of fluid, or a fiber from clothing could provide the undeniable link that verbal interrogation failed to secure. The stakes surrounding the physical processing of that machine were astronomical. The vehicle was no longer just a mode of transportation. Single procedural error could render a crucial piece of evidence inadmissible in court. It was a rolling repository of potential criminal data waiting to be decoded by forensic specialists. The pressure to crack that metal vault open was immense, but the risk of rushing the process was even greater. This brings us back to the suffocating darkness beneath the heavy synthetic fabric deployed in that commercial lot. The decision by federal agents to completely obscure their initial search of the rear cargo area was not a theatrical gesture for the cameras. It was a desperate, calculated maneuver to protect the ultimate trump card in their investigative deck. When crime scene technicians finally cracked the seal on that rear hatch, they were exposing the most vulnerable and potentially damning environment within the entire mobile crime scene. The cargo space of any suspect transportation is historically the primary zone of interest in sudden disappearance cases. It is the designated area for concealment, for transport of illicit materials, and tragically for the containment of human victims. Whatever the federal technicians discovered inside that specific compartment was deemed so explosively. The tarp was not just a physical barrier, it was a legal shield designed to protect the sensitive that even a fleeting glimpse by a telephoto lens could have triggered a catastrophic legal failure. According to Fox News Digital, the items extracted and photographed on site were shielded with extreme prejudice. We must understand the psychological warfare occurring parallel to this physical search. While the technicians documented the hidden contents, the detained driver was sitting in an interrogation room across town. The most powerful weapon an interrogator possesses is asymmetric information. They must know undeniable physical facts about the crime that the suspect believes are still completely hidden. If the media broadcasted the exact nature of the recovered items, the suspect would immediately know exactly what the police had found. They could instantly adapt their alibi, fabricate a plausible excuse for the presence of those specific objects, and effectively neutralize the strongest piece of leverage the detectives held. The blackout was designed to keep the alleged perpetrator completely off balance and guessing about the extent of their exposure. The asphalt of a seemingly ordinary Culver's parking lot on the night of February 13th, 2026. Integrity of a narrative that was only just beginning to unfold in the eyes of the law. Furthermore, naming the specific items without official confirmation poses an immense defamation risk. The internet is eager to fill the information vacuum with wild claims about weapons or biological hazards. But in a court of law, prematurely declaring the existence of unverified evidence can be weaponized by defense attorneys to argue that the entire investigation was prejudiced by media contamination. If a channel boldly claims a specific object was found and that claim is later proven false or technically inaccurate, it destroys the credibility of the reporting and disrespects the rigorous standards of the judicial process. The true suspense lies not in inventing details, but in recognizing the profound gravity of the FBI mandated silence. The visual of those agents working blindly under the suffocating material is terrifying precisely because it implies they found something that demands absolute federal protection. It signifies a threshold has been crossed from a missing persons search into a highly classified recovery operation. The hidden items represent the physical bridge between the victim's serene home environment and the chaotic reality of the intercepted transport. Long before the flashing lights illuminated that parking lot, the narrative began in the quiet, affluent enclaves of the Catalina foothills in Tucson, Arizona. They are the tangible manifestation of the crime itself, waiting in the dark to be formally entered into the legal record. Let us know your thoughts on this strict federal protocol in the comments below. And tell us how you would analyze the tactical decision to shield the cargo area from the public eye. The items remain locked in an evidence locker, their nature known only to a tight circle of federal prosecutors and lead detectives. This deliberate concealment builds an agonizing pressure cooker of anticipation. The public is forced to wait while the legal machinery slowly grinds forward, preparing to unveil the contents only when the courtroom doors finally close and the trial begins. This is the excruciating reality of modern forensic investigation, where the most vital discoveries are hidden under heavy blue sheets far away from the demanding glare of the 24-hour news cycle. The silence surrounding the cargo hold is not a lack of information, but rather a glaring indicator of its overwhelming evidentiary value. Here, 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie lived a life defined by routine and medical necessity. The authorities are guarding the secret because they know it holds the key to the entire prosecution strategy. The contents of that hidden space will eventually dictate the narrative of the trial, shaping the charges and ultimately deciding the fate of the accused. The tarp is a physical promise that a revelation is coming, one that will permanently shatter the mysteries surrounding that desert night. We are watching a high-stakes game of forensic chess, where the most powerful pieces are currently hidden from the board, waiting for the precise moment to strike. The tactical discipline required to maintain this level of secrecy is staggering. Every officer involved must adhere to strict non-disclosure agreements, knowing that a single leaked photograph could unravel years of painstaking investigative work. This silent standoff between the federal agencies and the public curiosity forces us to respect the immense gravity of the impending legal battle. The hidden evidence is the storm gathering on the horizon. The immediate chaos of the commercial lot takedown has now settled into a terrifying and prolonged period of systemic waiting. She was the mother of a prominent national television anchor, but her daily existence was far removed from the glaring lights of a broadcast studio. The aggressive tactical maneuvers have been replaced by the excruciatingly slow burn of scientific processing and legal maneuvering. The most agonizing reality of this current plateau is the continued absence of the 84-year-old mother. Despite the dramatic seizure of the suspected transport and the intense questioning of the individual found behind the wheel, she remains missing. The primary objective of the entire federal mobilization has yet to be fulfilled, leaving a profound void at the center of the narrative. According to continuous updates from broadcast affiliates like ABC7, the detained driver is currently designated strictly as a person of interest. It is absolutely crucial to maintain this legal distinction. In the eyes of the law, this individual is an alleged participant, not a convicted perpetrator. The justice system demands patience, as the evidentiary foundation is meticulously constructed piece by piece. The authorities cannot rush a formal indictment based on circumstantial proximity or tactical interceptions alone. They require absolute scientific certainty. The entire investigation is currently suspended in a state of agonizing paralysis, waiting for two parallel streams of highly complex data to finally converge. Her reality was grounded in the meticulous management of her health. First, there is the microscopic battle being waged in the federal laboratories. The biological material extracted from the quiet suburban residence is undergoing rigorous and time-consuming genetic mapping. The scientists must systematically filter out contamination and isolate the specific genetic markers that define the unknown intruder. Every day that passes without a confirmed laboratory match is another day the suspect sits in legal limbo, and the family suffers in unimaginable uncertainty. The second stream of data is purely digital and profoundly intimate. The authorities are undoubtedly working to retrieve and interpret the encrypted signals from the internal medical hardware. The continuous health monitor implanted in the chest of the victim holds the definitive timeline of her final known moments. Unlocking that proprietary medical data requires specialized technical collaboration and complex legal subpoenas. The investigators must meticulously align the biological timestamps from the medical device with the geographic tracking data of the intercepted vehicle. They are trying to synchronize the rhythm of a failing heart with the exact movements of a silver sport utility vehicle across the desert landscape. She suffered from high blood pressure, a condition requiring daily medication and careful monitoring. This is a monumental task of digital correlation that cannot be accelerated by sheer willpower. The silence from the authorities is not an indication of inaction, but a testament to the immense burden of proof required in a high-profile federal prosecution. The slow burn dread permeates every aspect of this waiting period. The community watches the empty house in the foothills and the impounded vehicle in the federal lot, knowing that the answers are locked within microscopic strands of DNA and encrypted lines of medical code. The tension is no longer about the chase, but about the agonizingly slow revelation of undeniable scientific truth. We are left staring at a fractured timeline, waiting for the brilliant minds in the forensic laboratories to finally solder the broken pieces back together. The profound tragedy of this situation is magnified by the sheer technical brilliance required to solve it. Law enforcement is not relying on eyewitness testimony or coerced confessions. They are relying on the absolute objectivity of hard data. More importantly, her chest housed a sophisticated piece of medical technology, a pacemaker. This shift from human unreliability to technological certainty is a defining characteristic of modern criminal justice. It forces us to confront the chilling reality that our most private biological rhythms can become the most crucial pieces of public evidence. The wait is excruciating precisely because the final scientific verdict will be absolute and irreversible, leaving no room for alternate interpretations or internet theories. Every single tick of the clock amplifies the pressure on the federal technicians tasked with translating those microscopic signals into a coherent legal narrative. Will the impending genetic results provide the undeniable link needed to upgrade the person of interest to an officially accused defendant? And what will the encrypted medical logs ultimately reveal about the exact sequence of events that shattered the tranquility of that January night? The resolution of this case hangs entirely on the silent testimony of invisible evidence. What this case teaches us about the intersection of medical technology and criminal investigation is fundamentally redefining the landscape of modern forensics. Historically, detectives reconstructed a timeline based on external environmental factors like security footage, cell phone pings, or the unreliable memories of human witnesses. However, the integration of advanced biometric hardware into daily life has created a revolutionary paradigm shift. This device was surgically implanted to regulate her heartbeat, ensuring a steady rhythm through electrical impulses. When an individual relies on an internal automated health monitor, they are unknowingly carrying a highly precise biological black box. From an analytical perspective, this transforms a medical necessity into a pristine forensic asset. The practical value here is understanding that the human body itself, when synced with medical technology, is now the most accurate crime scene logger in existence. This device does not sleep, it does not get distracted, and it cannot be intimidated by a suspect. It meticulously records the exact physiological response to extreme stress, trauma, or sudden system failure. By analyzing these automated physiological responses, investigators can pinpoint the exact moment a confrontation occurred, effectively neutralizing any fabricated alibis presented by the alleged perpetrator during subsequent tactical interrogations. In a court of law, this data provides an unprecedented level of objective truth. It removes the ambiguity of estimated times of death or the debated sequence of an assault. The system reads the encrypted biological data to establish an impenetrable timeline that defense attorneys find incredibly difficult to dismantle. But a modern pacemaker does much more than just shock a heart into compliance. It forces us to acknowledge that personal safety and legal accountability are now deeply intertwined with the microscopic sensors regulating our vital organs. This case serves as a profound clinical example of how the justice system is adapting to read the hidden digital language of the human body, utilizing life-saving medical technology as the ultimate unblinking witness to violence. This is the future of forensic science. The stark reality of the current situation is defined by a terrifying imbalance of information. We have a heavily guarded sport utility vehicle sitting in a federal impound lot. We have a person of interest enduring intense questioning by seasoned interrogators. Yet despite the massive deployment of tactical resources and scientific expertise, there are currently no official charges filed in connection with this sudden disappearance. The detained driver remains strictly an alleged participant, shielded by the presumption of innocence until the laboratory hard data dictates otherwise. The entire trajectory of this investigation is holding its collective breath for a single pivotal moment. The answers are coming, and they will be documented in meticulous detail. It is essentially a continuous, real-time data logger. When the final genetic sequence is undeniably matched and cross-referenced with the physical evidence, securely hidden beneath the blue tarp, what specific legal judgment will finally be handed down by the courts? Will the encrypted health logs provide the definitive timeline required to secure a conviction? Hit the notification bell right now, because we will update you with the verified court documents the moment this case breaks wide open. Stay analytical, and we will see you in the next deep dive into the absolute truth. This was not a routine traffic stop. Heavily armed SWAT officers and FBI agents formed a rigid perimeter around a silver Range Rover. It records every single cardiac event, every fluctuation in heart rate, every instance of physical exertion, and every moment of rest. It timestamps these biological occurrences with digital precision, creating an unbroken chronological ledger of her physiological state. In the context of a criminal investigation, this medical device transforms into a silent, incorruptible digital witness. The data stored within its microchip could definitively establish exact timelines, indicating precisely when her heart rate spiked in panic, or tragically when it ceased to beat entirely. This is the intersection of biology and digital forensics. The Catalina foothills, with its sprawling properties and sweeping desert views, offers a profound sense of isolation and security. The winding roads and private driveways create a barrier between the residents and the bustling city below. For an 84-year-old woman managing cardiovascular vulnerabilities, this environment provided a necessary sanctuary. The thick walls of her residence were meant to keep the unpredictable world at bay. Their focus was singular and intensely guarded. Instead of immediately processing the vehicle in the open air, they systematically deployed large opaque blue tarps. She moved through her home following the familiar pathways from the kitchen to the living room. Her vital signs continuously monitored and recorded by the machine resting beneath her collarbone. The rhythm of her life was documented beat by beat, stored in a digital vault that no intruder could easily erase. Every morning she woke the pacemaker, logged the transition from sleep to wakefulness. Every evening she rested the device, noted the deceleration of her pulse. The house remained perfectly still. The desert landscape outside her windows offered no hint of the approaching disruption. The internal clock of her medical device simply continued its endless counting, A steady electrical metronome ticking away the final, undisputed hours of her normal life, completely unaware that an external force was about to permanently alter that physiological timeline. The established rhythm of that timeline abruptly shattered on the night of January 31st, 2026. Nancy Guthrie vanished from her secluded Catalina foothills residence. They draped these thick synthetic sheets over the entire rear section of the sport utility vehicle. Specifically, there were no immediate signs of a struggle broadcasted to the public, no blaring alarms shattering the desert night. The transition from a quiet evening to a missing persons case was terrifyingly silent. When the realization of her disappearance finally triggered an official response, the initial physical evidence at the scene presented a deeply troubling contradiction. By February 6th, investigators arrived at her property not to search the immediate desert surroundings, but to focus their attention squarely on her garage. Inside, parked exactly where it belonged, was her personal vehicle. Local broadcast networks, including NBC4 and ABC7, captured the methodical process as authorities prepared to remove the car. A heavy-duty tow truck slowly backed into the driveway. Technicians secured the vehicle with heavy chains and winches, ensuring no forensic evidence on the exterior or interior was compromised during the transfer. The hydraulic lift engaged, raising the car from the concrete floor of the garage where it had sat undisturbed since the night she vanished. The vehicle was then carefully transported to a secure law enforcement facility for comprehensive forensic processing, obscuring the trunk from the telephoto lenses of local news crews positioned beyond the yellow tape. The presence of her car at the residence established a chilling factual baseline. She did not drive herself away from the home. The 84-year-old woman with high blood pressure and a pacemaker did not simply decide to take a midnight walk into the vast Arizona desert. She was entirely dependent on external transportation to leave that property. If her car remained secured in the garage, the logical conclusion was both inescapable and grim. She had to have been transported in a different vehicle. Who was behind the wheel of the secondary vehicle that night? How did they approach the house without triggering immediate alarm? Did they coerce her into leaving, or was she physically forced? The towing of her personal car was a definitive statement by law enforcement that they were no longer looking for a woman who had simply wandered off. According to Fox News Digital, investigators carefully extracted items from the cargo area, photographing them meticulously within the artificial darkness of the makeshift tent. They were actively hunting for the method of her conveyance. They were looking for the phantom vehicle that breached the security of the Catalina foothills and vanished into the night with an 84-year-old woman. The empty space left on the garage floor after the tow truck departed served as a stark physical representation of the missing narrative. The entire investigation now pivoted on identifying the unknown vehicle and its driver. They needed to find the machine that carried her away from the digital sanctuary of her home. The search for that phantom vehicle and the truth of what happened inside the residence took a dramatic turn when crime scene investigators processing the Catalina foothills home isolated a microscopic anomaly hidden among the mundane biological debris of daily life. They successfully extracted a foreign DNA profile. This was not a degraded sample or a partial read. It was a viable sequence. Crucially, when cross-referenced against the genetic markers of Nancy Guthrie and her immediate family members, the results yielded a definitive negative. They were shielding something critical from public view before towing the entire vehicle to a secure federal impound lot. The DNA belonged to an outsider. An unknown individual had been inside the secure environment of that house around the time the timeline fractured. This microscopic revelation immediately elevated the severity and scope of the operation. It was no longer a local missing persons inquiry. The presence of unidentified biological material linked to a sudden disappearance triggered the full deployment of federal resources. The FBI integrated with local detectives, forming a unified task force driven by the urgent need to attach a name to that genetic sequence. The investigation accelerated rapidly, shifting from the quiet desert foothills to the busy commercial arteries of Tucson. Just 2 weeks after the disappearance, the focus aggressively narrowed to a specific target located a mere 2 miles from the Guthrie residence. The target was not a building, but a moving piece of machinery, a silver Range Rover. The sudden convergence of SWAT and FBI agents at the Culver S parking lot on the night of February 13th was the direct tactical culmination of this accelerated hunt. What exactly did forensics recover from the trunk of that abandoned vehicle that required such extreme immediate visual lockdown? They did not stumble upon this vehicle. They hunted it down and intercepted it in a highly coordinated traffic stop. The driver, a person of interest, was immediately detained at the scene and transported to an interrogation room. If you appreciate documentary investigations that prioritize verified forensic discoveries over sensationalized internet rumors, please take a moment to like this video and support our commitment to factual reporting. The detention of the driver and the seizure of the Range Rover created a massive pressure point in the case. The authorities now possessed a vehicle of interest, a detained driver, and an unidentified DNA profile from the crime scene. The entire trajectory of the investigation now hung on a single impending scientific comparison. They needed to know if the biological blueprint extracted from the victim's home would align with the genetic makeup of the individual pulled from the driver's seat of that SUV. The results of that swab would either validate their massive tactical strike or force them back to the very beginning of the hunt.